Hey, what's going on 3D community? In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up lights in Eevee. This particular image was set up in cycles. So what I'm going to try to do is set up the same lights using Eevee, and we'll see what we can learn and what I can show you at the same time. So as you can see, this is the scene, basic, low poly modeling here. And I already have the material set up, so all I have to do is set up the lighting. If I turn on my wires here, you can see I have quite a bit of lights set up. So let me just delete them and we'll start from scratch. The first lights that I need to set up are actually in these inside these light fixtures. So let's control or shift right click and place our first light. Let me just select my render layer and do shift A, light, and area light. And let's fire up Eevee. And it's actually cycles right now, so let me switch it to Eevee. That's way better. And the first thing we're going to do is scale this light down so it's inside the light fixture. Oops. And let me just go to the side view here and make sure it's inside properly. And what you see in the background, it's the world color. So in this case, I have it set to orange like you see here. But let's change it to maybe darkish blue, and just to switch things up. And also inside the settings, render settings, make sure you turn on your ambient occlusion bloom for the missing materials, screen space reflections, refraction. In this case, I have windows. And if you go into the color management, make sure you have it set to filmic, medium, high contrast, exposure, and gamma helps depending on the scene. So you can play around with those as well. But let's go in the side view here and play around with this light a little bit more. So as you can see, the first problem is the light is kind of leaking through the mesh. So to fix that, if you go inside the settings here, make sure you turn on your contact shadows. So that kind of does it a little bit. Also, you can play around with custom distance and bias. So if you play around with bias, as you can see, it's pushing the light up and down. So you can play around and see which setting you like. Let me just bring this up maybe to about here. Also, another thing to consider is the size of the light. So right now it's set to 1. If I bring this down to 0.3, this gives us a nice tapering effect, and it's way nicer and more realistic in terms of the look. For the custom distance, as you can see, the light is hitting the floor and bouncing on the wall as well. So I'm going to turn this on and bring this down to about 5. Or actually, let's try 3. And let's dial this back. So in this case, maybe 0.5 works the best. And the next step, I'm going to take this light and duplicate it around other fixtures. So I'm going to make sure it's selected. Do Shift D. Let's put it in here. Shift D. Shift D. And the last one in here. So this is our first setup here. So what we can do now, we can actually link these lights. So if you select them all, holding Shift. And this would be the last one that I'm selecting. You can do Control L, Object Data. And now when you change the intensity or color of this light, everything else will update. So let me go to darkish yellow or and reddish color and play around with the power here just to dial it down and see what kind of look I want to go for. So this is pretty good. So let's continue setting up our lights. As you can see in the reference image, I had a backlight that's coming from the back of this model here. So let's do that next. I'm going to reset my 3D cursor by doing Shift S, cursor to world origins. And now make sure your render layer selected, Shift A, light, area. Let's bring this up, scale it. And what we're going to do now is change the pivot point so the light rotates around the middle of the scene. So you click period, change it to 3D cursor. And now when we rotate around, it's actually rotating around the 3D, or the middle of the scene, I mean. So this is about here. Let's jump inside the camera view, turn off the wires, and crank this up to about 1200. So this is really nice. Just play around maybe here. I kind of like this highlight here. Maybe it's a little bit intense, but in this case, I'm going to leave it for now, and we'll see what happens later. And also, bloom has some effect to it, so I might have to bring this down later on. But I'm going to leave it for now. So let's continue setting up our lights. As you can see in the reference here, I had some lights set up under these overhangs here. Some are more intense, some are less, just to emphasize the tables and the front entrance here. So let's do that next. I'm going to shift right click in this area. Make sure your wires are turned on. Shift A, light area. I'm going to scale this down SY and rotate it around. So I'm going to do, actually let me just do SX as well. And now I'm going to rotate it around -90 or 90. Let me go to the side view here. Place it roughly in the middle here. And I'm going to duplicate this over and place one here as well. So if we select this light here, make sure your contact shadows is selected or checked on. Same thing for this light. Now let's play around with the color. Let's go for something pinkish reddish. And if we just control C on this color, it's going to duplicate it. You don't have to click anywhere. So control C and control V. As you can see, I duplicated the color. And now we can go inside the top view or the camera view, turn off the wires, and play around with intensity. And let's try maybe 60. Yeah, that's really nice. And for the second one, let's try 40. Yeah, that's nice. Little fall off on the tables. We can play around with the custom distance here, and yeah, let's try it. Why not? I'm gonna try 2, and that almost kind of disappears. So I'm gonna bring it back to 5. That's good. And for this one, let's try the same thing. Go from 0 to 3. I think we can do a little bit more. Let's try 6. Yeah, that's nice. And we can actually crank up this intensity here. I kind of like to emphasize that area a little bit more. So that's looking nice. Also for these lights here, we can actually probably crank them up as well, just a tiny bit. So instead of being 6.8, let's try 15. That's a little bit better. And now let's duplicate this light over to the car and the front entrance as well. And we're going to change the colors. So I'm going to go with my top view, Shift D, bring it about here, GZ to bring it down. And for the color here, I'll probably go back to orange. And for the intensity is way too much, so let's do 25. Yeah, that looks pretty nice. Let's actually try maybe reddish orange, or maybe even red. Yeah, that looks nice. And now let's go to the side view, Shift DX, bring in one more to the other side. And what we need now is Shift D one more time to bring it above the car here. GX, place it roughly in the middle to give it a nice highlight to the car. Let's just check what it looks like in the camera view. And let's just turn it on and off, see what that looks like. And in this case, I think I'm going to go back to the pink color for the car. And I'm going to maybe do 50 for intensity. So this is what we have so far. As you can see, the bottom of the building and the top is lit. The only thing is missing, based on the reference, is a little bit of highlights here and there in the front, and the bushes as well. So the way we're going to achieve that, we're going to use point lights instead of area. So I'm going to turn on my wires, shift right click, shift A, bring in my point light, maybe to about here. And now let's increase the intensity to maybe 100. That looks pretty nice. Let's play around with the position of this light here. Maybe it's actually, we can play around with distance because it's highlighting way too much on the tables. So we can keep this light selected. I like how it looks on the bushes part. So let's dial this to 2. Not enough. So from here, let's double up to 6. And that's actually pretty nice. A little highlight on the road there, and it's fallen off onto the bushes as well. For the color, this blue actually looks pretty nice. We can always change it to yellow, so it goes from like yellow to pink back to yellow, and then we have some orange in here. So that's nice as well. The only thing we have to do now is duplicate it over to the other bush. So I'm just going to go to the top view, bring this over to about here, and let me just check the camera. So this one's too much. I'm going to bring it to 30, and we have nice little fall off of light on the bushes here as well. And for the last light, let's light up the building here. So same thing, turn on the wires, shift right click, and we can actually use these lights that we created last. So let's do contact shadows, don't forget. And let me just duplicate this light over to the front. Maybe bring it above about here. And now it's all trial and error. It actually looks pretty nice. Let me just turn off custom distance in this case and play around with the highlight here. And also for the color, should we go back to yellow or red? Or let's try pink. Actually, pink looks pretty nice on this one. The only thing I don't like is these light fixtures, the color of them. So let's play around with those real quick in the camera view. Let's see, green, no. Red? Yeah, I think red is the closest one that I had for the reference here. So let's keep it on red. And now for the last effect, we have to bring in some bounce light, the probes, to make this look semi-decent, or actually close to cycles. So let's jump out, turn on the wires, and let's reset our 3D cursor. So Shift S, cursor to world origins. And now let's do Shift A, light probes, reflection cube first. Let's scale this up, change it from sphere to box. I'll bring this up so it's barely touching the floor here. So that's done. Now same thing, light probes, volume. Scale it up, GZ, bring it up so it's barely touching the floor. And now let's play around with the settings for it. So for the resolution, let's bring it to 6. And let's see. For the cube map, everything's fine. For here, everything's fine. Now let's check the render settings before we bake the lighting. For the cube size, I'm going to bring it to 1000. Bounce is 5. Shadows, same thing, 1000, and the height bit depth. So for the settings of the glass, make sure inside the material here, let me just select the glass. Oops. As you can see here inside options, if you click N, you have blending mode in the 4th tab. So 1, 2, 3, 4 options. Blending mode, make sure you change it to alpha, clip, or blend. And also turn on screen space refraction. So that's going to make your glass more realistic and actually see-through. Another thing you can do is do Shift A and find transparent BSDF and multiply these or mix these two. Oops. And this way you have control of how transparent it is, as you can see here. So let's bake our lighting and let's see what this looks like. The only thing missing, I didn't use any environment maps, HDRIs inside cycles here, but for the glass inside Eevee, we might have to use an environment map to make this look more realistic. So instead of the background here, I'm going to change it to quick. Let's see here. Instead of using the color, I'm going to change it to environment. And I'm going to open an HDRI, free HDRI Haven maps. So let's try maybe one of these. Open. And that looks pretty nice. 0.3 I think is fine. And let me just go to camera view, turn on my wires, and let's bake indirect lighting and see what that looks like. Okay guys, so after baking the lighting, this is what we have so far. The light from the environment is a little bit too much, so I might have to dial this down quite a bit and bake it again. So let me just delete the cache here, and let's see what it looks like with 0. And let me just try to bring this up a tiny bit. I guess in this case maybe 0.1 would do the trick. Yeah, I think that's better. So let me try to bake it one more time. So this is the result, guys, that we got after baking the light. From here, what you can do is play around with the different intensities and try to match the contrast or the look that you're going for. But this is the basic workflow of working with lights inside Eevee. It's basically, playing around with intensity, distance, and custom, let's see, what is this called? And contact shadows and different distance, bias, and thickness to get the look that you want. But yeah, as hopefully you learned something. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day, guys. Goodbye.